Greetings, everyone. Mr. Hunter here. Welcome to the second part of our three-part series on the three great Renaissance masters, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo Buonarroti, and today's subject, Raphael Sanzio da Urbino. From this point forward, simply refer to him as Raphael. We will take a close look at his greatest work, the Stanza della Signatura, which includes his greatest masterpiece, the School of Athens. Now, the School of Athens and the other works of art are large frescoes that are located within the walls of the Vatican, the headquarters of the Catholic Church. So, just where is this Vatican? Is it in Italy, Rome? The answer to these questions is neither. Now, the Vatican isn't in Rome, but it certainly is surrounded by Rome. And unless you have serious connections inside the Vatican, you will most likely stay at a hotel or Airbnb in Rome and then take a taxi, moped, rent a car, or walk, take a bike to the Vatican. Now, the Vatican City State, also known as the Vatican, became independent from Italy with the Lateran Treaty in 1929. So it's an independent city state with an area of 121 acres and a population of about 825, which makes it the smallest state in the world by both area and population. St. Peter's Basilica is the most renowned work of Renaissance architecture, the largest church in the world in the very heart and soul of Vatican City. It's adjacent to St. Peter's Basilica, where you'll find the Sistine Chapel, our subject for next week, with Michelangelo, and Pope Julius II's Stanza Signatura, the signing room, where we will find Raphael's masterpieces, including the School of Athens, just steps away from the frescoes of the Sistine Chapel. The Stanza della Signatura used to be the Pope's library and part of the papal living quarters. Imagine this room with lower walls lined with books. The Stanza della Signatura is Raphael's greatest accomplishment, located in the former papal apartments of Julius II. Now, the stanza included 4 large frescoes based on the 4 branches of human knowledge. The upper left, we have the School of Athens, which represents the branch of knowledge of philosophy, which included the sciences at this time. Across from this, we have the School of Athens is theology, which represents issues of God and the divine, also known as La Disputa. Number 3, lower left, is the fresco dedicated to the branch of knowledge known as poetry or literature. And then the final one is justice. Now, the geometric meander inspired by the designs found on ancient Greek pottery is what we see underpinning the arch here in the School of Athens. Here's an example of the geometric period pottery from approximately 900 to 700 BCE, or several hundred years before the Greek classical era. The School of Athens' visual power emanates from the figures in the middle of the composition, Plato and Aristotle. Plato is known for being interested in the ethereal, the theoretical, that which cannot be seen. There is much more than just physical reality, what we can see, touch, smell, hear, and taste. Aristotle, on the other hand, is more interested in the physical, actual world that can be observed. As Plato is known for being interested in the ethereal, we see further evidence of this. On the other hand, Aristotle is more interested in the physical, the actual world that can be observed. This is emphasized with the gesture of his right hand outstretched, palm face down, to emphasize the physical down here on earth. Other ways to distinguish the 2 great philosophers: Plato, of course, is older, in fact, was Aristotle's teacher, holding his book, the Timaeus. His face are reminiscent of the Da Vinci self-portrait that we saw in last week's presentation. Plato's in the ethereal, the theoretical, are symbolized in the color of his clothing, which is colored red and purple to signify air and fire, which were both perceived as weightless. Aristotle, younger, holding one of his books, the Ethics, and his interest in that which is physical, that which is observable, is further emphasized in the color of his clothes, blue and brown for water and earth, that which is affected by gravity. Plato's side of the painting includes philosophers concerned with issues of the ideal. Aristotle's is more interested in the practical application of thought. Take Euclid as a prime example of this idea. Euclid, who we associate with geometry and is actually drawing a geometric diagram for his audience of students, He is interested in the precise measurement, the application of math to the world in practical ways through engineering and architecture. In fact, the model for Euclid was Raphael's friend and one of the great architects of the High Renaissance, Donato Bramante. You can see that Bramante's influence on the fresco does not stop with his face, portraying the great mathematician Euclid, but Raphael also used Bramante's architectural design ideas to create the setting for the School of Athens to be in. A few years earlier, Julius II awarded the greatest architectural commission of the 16th century, which was to rebuild St. Peter's to Bramante, to rebuild it from the ground up. Here you see a draft of his original design and the drawing of his version of the Great Dome. Here we see Bramante's treatment of St. Peter's Basilica with a strong assist from Michelangelo. The coffered vault opening up to a great dome, pilasters jutting out from the walls on either side. We can see in the School of Athens the same coffered barreled vaults, the pilasters on either side, the open domes. We also see niches on either side of the central vaults featuring figurative sculptures in the classical style. On the left, there is Apollo, the god of the sun, music, and poetry, a perfect fit for all things ethereal and platonic. On the other side, the more grounded side that is Aristotle and his followers, stands Athena, the god of war and wisdom, symbolizing man's practical nature. Euclid has equally important counterpart on the Platonic side of the gathering, Pythagoras. Pythagoras holds court with his audience of students as he shares his discoveries of laws of harmony and music and mathematics, or maybe he's just assigning some algebra homework that focus on solving for C using a right triangle and solving for the hypotenuse that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Ha! Also on Plato's side of the fresco is the Socrates group, who we find in conversation with his students, punching holes in their arguments, demonstrating to them how to think and communicate more precisely. Now we move back over to the Aristotelian side and we find the astronomer group. The astronomer group includes ancient group of scientists interested in the physical universe. This group of figures also includes a portrait of the artist. Raphael is here taking his place among the great minds focused on the stars and planets beyond our own world. This is an important distinction as until the Renaissance, artists were considered and looked upon simply as artisans or craftsmen. Here is Raphael's proof, quite literally, that it takes a great artist to visualize and synthesize all of the other aspects of human thought. Just to the left of the astronomers in the Euclid group on Aristotle's side is Diogenes, one of the two solitary figures. He was perhaps the most famous homeless man in ancient history. Diogenes was a cynic, a philosopher who was skeptical of all philosophies. Raphael renders Diogenes as barefoot and half naked. In his relation to the king next to him, he displays indifference, proving that he is unmoved by status, wealth, or royal connections. In fact, he objects to Alexander, whose shadow is blocking the sunlight that he was reading by. Raphael used the image of Michelangelo as his model for a fellow and brooding solitary figure that Heraclitus, who sits in one of the most prominent spots in the whole composition. You will also learn how to draw using 1 and 2 point linear perspective later in the semester, but you get a solid preview in the School of Athens. Raphael uses 1 point perspective for the whole composition except for Heraclitus's writing table, the chunk of marble, which is in 2 point perspective. So Raphael sets examples all over this composition of the classical idea of the sharing of ideas and knowledge. Knowledge freely shared can be, in some people's eyes, a very dangerous thing, but not in this work or this particular time. Thank you.